how can one express with words anything that pertains to the Lord, who's above all, who's situated perfectly in transcendence, which is above all the material qualities. So it's a very important question, and we've come to the point where it's a gradual process to be able to be elevated to a point where one is Brahma Bhuta, established on a transcendental platform also. Never equal to Krishna, but at least free from the influence of the modes of material nature. Then it's possible, even though one is in the material world, to begin to understand the reality of Krishna's transcendental nature. So we're continuing now. It says, the statements of the personified Vedas give clear evidence that the Vedic literature is presented only for understanding Krishna. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that through all the Vedas, it is Krishna alone who has to be understood. Krishna is always enjoying, either in the material world or in the spiritual world, because he is the supreme enjoyer. For him, there is no distinction between the material and spiritual worlds. The material world is an impediment for the ordinary living entities because they are under its control. But Krishna, being the controller of the material world, has nothing to do with the impediments it offers. Therefore, in different parts of the Upanishads, the Vedas declare, the Supreme Brahman is eternal, full of all knowledge and all bliss. That one Supreme Personality of Godhead exists in the heart of every living entity. Because of his all-pervasiveness, he is able to enter not only into the hearts of the living entities, but even into the atoms also. As the Supersoul, he is the controller of all activities of the living entities. He lives within all of them and witnesses their actions, allowing them to act according to their desires. And also giving them the results of different activities. He is the living force of all things, but he is transcendental to the material qualities. He is omnipotent. He is expert in manufacturing everything, and on account of his superior natural knowledge, he can bring everyone under his control. As such, he is everyone's master. He is sometimes manifested on the surface of the globe, but he is simultaneously within all matter. Desiring to expand himself in multi-forms, he glanced over the material energy, and thus innumerable living entities became manifest. Everything is created by his superior energy, and everything in his creation appears to be perfectly done without deficiency. Those who aspire for liberation from this material world must therefore worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the ultimate cause of all causes. He is just like the total mass of earth, from which varieties of earthly pots are manufactured. The pots are made of earthly clay. They rest on the earth, and after being destroyed, their elements ultimately merge back into the earth, the original cause of all varieties of manifestation. Employing this analogy of Brahman with earth, the impersonalists especially stress the Vedic statement, Sarvam Klav Idam Brahma. Everything is Brahman. The impersonalists do not take into account the varieties of manifestation emanating from the supreme cause, Brahman. They simply consider that everything emanates from Brahman, and after destruction everything merges into Brahman, and that the intermediate stage of manifestation is also Brahman. But although the Mayavadis believe that prior to its manifestation the cosmos was in Brahman, after creation it remains in Brahman, and after destruction it merges in Brahman, they do not know what Brahman is. The Brahma Samhita, however, clearly describes Brahman. The living entities, space, time, and the material elements like fire, earth, water, sky, and mind, constitute the total cosmic manifestation known as Bu, Bhuva, and Swa, which is manifested by Govinda. It flourishes on the strength of Govinda, and after annihilation enters into and is conserved in Govinda. Lord Brahma therefore says, I worship Lord Govinda, the original personality, the cause of all causes. The word Brahman indicates the greatest of all and the maintainer of everything. The impersonalists are attracted by the greatness of the sky, but because of their poor fund of knowledge, they are not attracted by the greatness of Krishna. In our practical life, however, we are attracted by the greatness of a person and not by the greatness of a big mountain. Thus, the term Brahman actually applies to Krishna only. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna admitted that Lord Krishna is the Param Brahman, or the supreme resting place of everything. Krishna is the supreme Brahman because of his unlimited knowledge, unlimited potencies, unlimited strength, unlimited influence, unlimited beauty, and unlimited renunciation. Ultimately, therefore, the word Brahman can be applied to Krishna only. Arjuna affirms that because the impersonal Brahman is the effulgence emanating as rays of Krishna's transcendental body, Krishna is the Para Brahman. Everything rests on Brahman, but Brahman itself rests on Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is the ultimate Brahman, or Para Brahman. The material elements are accepted as the inferior energy of Krishna. By their interaction, the cosmic manifestation takes place. Rests on Krishna, and after dissolution, again enters into the body of Krishna as a subtle energy. Krishna is therefore the cause of both manifestation and dissolution. Sarvam Klavidam Brahma means that everything is Krishna in the sense that everything is his energy. That is the vision of the Mahabhagavatas. They see everything in relation to Krishna. The impersonalists argue that Krishna himself has been transformed into many, and that therefore everything is Krishna, and worship of anything is worship of him. This false argument is answered by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. Although everything is a transformation of the energy of Krishna, he is not present everywhere. He is simultaneously present and not present. By his energy, he is present everywhere, but as the energetic, he is not present everywhere. This simultaneous presence and non-presence is inconceivable to our present senses, but a clear explanation is given in the beginning of the Ishopanishad, in which it is stated that the Supreme Lord is so complete that although unlimited energies and their transformations emanate from him, Krishna's personality is not in the least bit transformed. Therefore, since Krishna is the cause of all causes, intelligent persons should take shelter of his lotus feet. Krishna advises everyone to surrender unto him alone, and that is the way of Vedic instruction. Since Krishna is the cause of all causes, he is worshipped by all kinds of sages and saints through observance of the regulative principles. As far as meditation is concerned, great personalities meditate on the transcendental form of Krishna within the heart. In this way, the minds of great personalities are always engaged in Krishna. With minds engaged in Krishna, naturally the captivated devotees simply talk of Krishna. Talking of Krishna or singing of Krishna is called kirtana. The Lord Chaitanya recommends kirtaniya sadahari, which means always thinking and talking of Krishna and nothing else. That is called Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is so sublime that anyone who takes to this process is elevated to the highest perfection of life, far, far beyond the concept of liberation. In the Bhagavad Gita, therefore, Krishna advises everyone always to think of him, remember devotional service to him, worship him, and offer obeisances to him. In this way, a devotee becomes fully Krishnized, and being always situated in Krishna consciousness ultimately goes back to Krishna. Although the Vedas have recommended worship of different demigods as different parts and parcels of Krishna, it is to be understood that such instructions are meant for less intelligent men who are still attracted by material sense enjoyment. But the person who actually wants perfect fulfillment of the mission of human life should simply worship Lord Krishna, and that will simplify the matter and completely guarantee the success of his human life. Although the sky, the water, and the land are all part of the material world, when one stands on the solid land, his position is more secure than when he stands in the sky or the water. An intelligent person, therefore, does not stand under the protection of different demigods, although they are part and parcel of Krishna. Rather, he stands on the solid ground of Krishna consciousness. That makes his position sound and secure. Impersonalists sometimes give the example that if one stands on a stone or a piece of wood, one will certainly stand on the surface of the land, because the stone and wood both rest on the surface of the earth. But it may be replied that if one stands directly on the surface of the earth, he is more secure than if he stands on the wood or stone which rest on the earth. In other words, taking shelter of Paramatma or taking shelter of impersonal Brahman is not as secure a course as taking direct shelter of Krishna in Krishna consciousness. The position of the Jnanis and Yogis is therefore not as secure as the position of the devotees of Krishna. Lord Krishna has therefore advised in the Bhagavad Gita that only a person who has lost his sense takes to the worship of demigods. And regarding persons attached to the impersonal Brahman, Srimad Bhagavatam says, "My dear Lord, those who think of themselves as liberated by mental speculation are not yet purified of the contamination of material nature because of their inability to find the shelter of your lotus feet. Although they rise to the transcendental situation of existence in impersonal Brahman, they certainly fall from that exalted position because they deride your lotus feet. Lord Krishna therefore advises that the worshippers of the demigods are not very intelligent persons because they derive only temporary, exhaustible results. Their endeavors are those of less intelligent men. On the other hand, the Lord assures that his devotee has no fear of falling. The personified Vedas continued to pray, Dear Lord, considering all points of view, if a person has to worship someone superior to himself, then just out of good behavior, he should stick to the worship of your lotus feet because you are the ultimate controller of creation, maintenance, and dissolution. You are the controller of the three worlds, Bhu, Bhuva, and Swa. You are the controller of the 14 upper and lower worlds, and you are the controller of the three material qualities. Demigods and persons advanced in spiritual knowledge always hear and chant about your transcendental pastimes because this process has the specific potency of nullifying the accumulated results of sinful life. Intelligent persons factually dip into the ocean of your nectarian activities and very patiently hear about them. Thus, they immediately become freed from the contamination of the material qualities. They do not have to undergo severe penances and austerities for advancement in spiritual life. This chanting and hearing of your transcendental pastimes is the easiest process for self-realization. Simply by submissive oral reception of the transcendental message, one's heart is cleansed of all dirty things. Thus, Krishna consciousness becomes fixed in the heart of a devotee. The great authority Bhisma Deva has also given the opinion that this process of chanting and hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the essence of all Vedic ritualistic performances. Dear Lord, the personified Vedas continued, the devotee who wants to elevate himself simply by this process of devotional activities, especially by hearing and chanting, very soon comes out of the clutches of the dualities of material existence. By this simple process of penance and austerity, the supersoul within the devotee's heart is very pleased and gives the devotee direction so that he may go back home, back to Godhead. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that one who engages all his activities and senses in the devotional service of the Lord becomes completely peaceful because the supersoul is satisfied with him. Thus the devotee becomes transcendental to all dualities, such as heat and cold, honor and dishonor. Being freed from all dualities, He feels transcendental bliss, and he no longer suffers cares and anxieties due to material existence. The Bhagavad Gita confirms that the devotee always absorbed in Krishna consciousness has no anxieties for his maintenance or protection. Being constantly absorbed in Krishna consciousness, he ultimately achieves the highest perfection. While in material existence, he lives very peacefully and blissfully without cares and anxieties, and after quitting this body, he goes back home, back to Godhead. The Lord confirms in the Bhagavad Gita, my supreme abode is a transcendental place, from which having gone, one never returns to this material world. Anyone who attains the supreme perfection, being engaged in my personal devotional service in the eternal abode, reaches the highest perfection of human life and does not have to come back to the miserable material world. The personified Vedas continue, Dear Lord, it is imperative that the living entities be engaged in Krishna consciousness, always rendering devotional service by such prescribed methods as hearing and chanting and executing your orders. If a person is not engaged in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, it is useless for him to exhibit the symptoms of life. Generally, if a person is breathing, he is accepted to be alive, but a person without Krishna consciousness may be compared to a bellows in a blacksmith's shop. The big bellows is a bag of skin which exhales and inhales air, and a human being who simply lives with the bag of skin and bones without taking to Krishna consciousness and loving devotional service is no better than the bellows. Similarly, a non-devotee's long duration of life is compared to the long existence of a tree. His voracious eating capacity is compared to the eating of dogs and hogs, and his enjoyment in sex life is compared to that of hogs and goats. So here is quoting many verses from Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic scriptures. For example, Krishna says, Ananya Cheta Satatam Yomam Smarati Nityasaha Tasyaham Surlabha Partha Nityayuktasya Yogina. 8th chapter, 14th verse, where it says, For one who always remembers me without deviation, I am easy to obtain, O son of Pritha, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. Well, this is what's recommended here. We just read, the devotee who wants to elevate himself simply by this process of devotional activities, especially by hearing and chanting, very soon comes out of the clutches of the dualities of material existence. And then again we read, the chanting and hearing of your transcendental pastimes is the easiest process for self-realization. Simply by submissive oral reception of the transcendental message, one's heart is cleansed of all dirty things. So, therefore, Krishna also says, Shinvata swakata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridayam taksto hyabadrani vidunoti suhit satam. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st Canto, 2nd chapter, it says, to hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in devotional service to the Lord. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance. And thus, material lusts and avarice are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samshayam samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Shri Radha Nilmadhava Ki Jai. Then again, Krishna tells Arjuna, Mai eva mana adatsva mai buddhim niveshaya nivasisyati mai eva ata urdvam nasamsayaha. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without a doubt. And Prabhupada explains, one who is engaged in Lord Krishna's devotional service lives in a direct relationship with the Supreme Lord, so there's no doubt that his position is transcendental from the very beginning. A devotee does not live on the material plane. He lives in Krishna. The holy name of the Lord and the Lord are non-different. Therefore, when a devotee chants Hare Krishna, Krishna and his internal potency are dancing on the tongue of the devotee. When he offers Krishna food, Krishna directly accepts these eatables, and the devotee becomes Krishnized by eating the remnants. One who does not engage in such service cannot understand how this is so, although this is a process recommended in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literature. So, many places Prabhupada uses this word, Krishnized. He just used it in 8th chapter, 14th verse also. Where did he use that? Okay, anyway. Krishnized. So he used it in the Krishna book, we just read it. He says that in this way, a devotee becomes fully Krishnized, and being fully situated in Krishna consciousness ultimately goes back to Krishna. So, he said, in the Bhagavad Gita, therefore, Krishna advises everyone always to think of him, render devotional service to him, worship him, and offer obeisances to him. In this way, a devotee becomes fully Krishnized. Okay. Then it says, Atachittam samadatum nasaknosi maistiram abhyasa yogina tato mam ichaptum dhananjaya. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of bhakti yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. So, by engaging in bhakti yoga and following the regulative principles, our senses become purified. Right now, our senses are impure, so it's very hard to focus on Krishna due to our engagement in sense gratification. But in a purified state, they come directly in contact with Krishna. So this love of Krishna is now dormant in our heart. But it's covered over by the contamination of material association. If the heart is purified of material association, then that dormant natural love of Krishna is revived. That's the whole process. So what we read, beginning with Srinvata Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hidiyam Takstoi Bhadrani Viduno Tisrahit Satam, Nasta Praisu Bhadre Sunityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Tamasloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naistaki. Then Tadarajas tamo bhavo kamalobadayas chetaritar navitam stitvam sattve prasidati. And evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogitaha bhagavat tattva vigyanam yukta sangasya jayate mukta sangasya jayate vidite hirdaya grantis chidyante sarva samsaya shiyante tasyakarmani justa evat maniswari. So everything begins by hearing about Krishna from Vedic literature, especially the Bhagavad Gita. And one who hears about Krishna, Krishna within the heart purifies them. And therefore one can constantly engage in this hearing, because of purification one develops a taste to constantly hear about him. Then the devotee develops their dormant, natural, transcendental knowledge of Krishna, because love of Krishna is dormant in the heart. Then the more we hear about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from genuine devotees, we become fixed in the service of the Lord. Our service to the Lord was interrupted previously by developing material attachments. But by loosening those attachments through hearing, one gradually develops a desire to engage in service. Then the more one engages in service, the more one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, which are manifest as lust and greed. And these things are diminished. When these impurities are wiped away, a person becomes steady in their position of pure goodness. They become enlivened by devotional service, not by other things. And they understand the science of Krishna perfectly. By understanding the science, the hard knot of material attachment is cut, broken, undone. And one comes to the stage of samsayam samagram, understanding supreme absolute truth as Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's only by hearing from Krishna himself or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness that one understands the science of Krishna. It's not by doing any pranayama, asana, yoga, or listening to speculative people talk. So it depends on what source, and who the speaker is, for there to be genuine possibility of devotion, of spiritual advancement. Okay, we'll stop right there now and continue tomorrow. Hare Krishna.